Because what happens a lot in relationships is that couples tend to think that their partner having a different perspective means you're not on my side.
100%.
There's this desire that people can have to merge as one mind.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they feel like they are loved when their growth is stunted. Because when your partner does not bring you a deferring perspective, they're stunting your growth. That's what they're doing. But a lot of us can be trained to think that if you love me, you will see things the same way that I see them. But that's very toxic to the health of a relationship.
But I think another really important challenge, I would say, is the lack of support. And
outside support, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not from the the challenges of marriage, right? The couple can suffer from a lot of lack of support. So again, based on the numbers, Black people are not getting married, right? We might be cohabitating, there might be baby mamas, baby daddies, but we're not getting married. Okay. So finding other Black couples to have double dates with, or have game night with, or have, whatever, right? It's a challenge, and it can feel quite lonely, right? And so, for example, let's say out of a group of like 20 guys I grew up with, right, all around the same age, late 30s, early 40s, I think maybe like 4 or 5 of them are married, I think, right? And the rest aren't. And so then, you have to know who you're going to for advice. You have to know how you're, what kind of report you're presenting to other people when discussing your marriage. Because oftentimes people talk about their marriage in a negative light. Man, she did this, she did that, she did this. It's not like, oh my God, she's great, she's that. People don't usually do that.
Yeah.
Unless it's, women on some, my man is so da-da-da-da-da, right? When they're trying to, how should I say this? Indirectly compete with other women per se, I think. I don't know if that's the truth or not.
Okay.
That's how it comes across to me, right? So, but you shouldn't be ashamed to celebrate the good in your life, I don't think. But, so, with that said, I remember my best man at his wedding, both his wife-to-be, who was now his wife, and him, both of their set of parents were front row. And I remember I was sitting there while the pastor was speaking, was thinking, man, it must be so nice, right?
Yeah.
Not that, yeah,
no,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Not that their parents have perfect advice or their parents are super knowledgeable in how a relationship goes, but it's just like when you see a couple with gray hairs, and it's not just one of them, both parents were there, you're just like, man, there's a support system there, and the support system is typically going to, I'm idealizing as well, right? But it's going to like, everything will be fine. Everything will work out, right? Oftentimes, if a girl calls her girlfriend, he left the toilet seat up. Couldn't be me, girl. You get out of the relationship. Like, wow, toilet seat? I'm exaggerating, but I'm just saying, right? Dudes, hey, let's go hang out tonight. Oh, I'm doing this thing with wifey. Wow. Where do where are your balls? And where do you wear the pants? She tells you everything.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Almost.
Okay.
And it kind of like, and you hear this ever so often, and it's just like, I mean, is she telling me what to do? Is this happening? And then it starts to, infect how you show up in your relationship. And it can cause a ton of damage. And so not having, a good support system where you have a bunch of married people just, let's all talk to each other. Let's have where men can hold each other accountable for the stuff they do in their marriages, and women can hold each other accountable, as opposed to, girl, because another married couple who want to stay together and who are similarly yoked to another married couple, if a wife calls the other wife and complains, she's going to validate her feelings, and she's going to say, don't worry, everything will be okay. And maybe this, that, and the other. She's not going to be like, wouldn't be me. I'd be out of that marriage. They're not going to go that far, because you understand that they're daily battles sometimes. And sometimes it's not necessarily as bad as you think, right? The other way, like the men, it's like, bro, she's tripping again, and you know, she's pregnant, and ever since she's been in a mood that the other guy who has 2-3 kids, like, bro, that's just normal. This is her hormones. This, you know, why don't you? I should just do it, et cetera, right? And you know, don't take it personal, and they can kind of like understand that it's not as bad as you think it is. And having that support system is something that I envy that a lot of other communities have that we don't.
Yeah.
And why don't we have it? Well, again, we're the least married people out there. And so having that can feel super lonely.
And it can be a challenge for sure. I agree with you 100% that not having a support system and can be a huge challenge. So there's so much you said there. So a few years ago, I was going back and forth with a tech startup. And I was telling them how something that's really needed in the market is a dating app for married couples to find each other so that, you know, so that they can hang out together. And that's necessary. Because I do agree with you that can be a major challenge, especially if you're Black and married. It can be really hard. And the other thing that you said too about like when the man reaches out to his friends, and then you do want to, when the man says, I'm not going to hang out tonight, and then his friends will say things like, oh, you know, take your balls back, whatever things that they say, does she have your whatever. What I think is interesting about that is men often talk about how they feel emasculated by women. And I rarely hear men talk about how often they are emasculated by other men. But I hear a lot of the language that men use with each other, and it's very emasculating language. So I'm curious as to, I understand it feels worse when it comes from a woman, whatever. I get it.
Girl backbone.
Yeah, I get it. But there is a culture of men emasculating each other.
100%.
A good example of that in the public would be Rihanna and ASAP. Like how many comments do they talk about this man, you know? And
look how he's posing, and look at this, he's holding his baby. Like
it's a problem. I just wanted to say that.
It can feel super lonely, right? It's just, man, you know, you love what you have, and you know, if you're trying to be social, again, you're not trying to get like with a whole community of people, but man, can we have, what is it like? Hey, come to dinner at the Johnsons, and come to dinner at the Pitch, whatever.
Without it being a bunch of single people.
Yeah. Right. And there's nothing wrong with single people.
No.
But the problem is those single people. It's like, I don't want to say misery loves company, right? But you know, depend now.
No, I don't think for the most part, I don't think it's coming from it. That is a part of it, but I don't think a lot of it is, when you're talking about friendships, that is about misery loves company. I think a lot of times it's just from a place of ignorance. So if you've never been married, you just don't know what it's like, you know? So I think it's more ignorance than a thing about trying to drag your friend down into your misery more than anything else.
I would have to agree. And the thing is that oftentimes I think they can indirectly, you know, because what I've heard, I remember, I forgot what podcast I was watching, but a woman said, you know, as soon as she got married and had kids, all of a sudden she started being invited to less things.
Yeah, that automatically happens.
Yeah, she's not the fun one anymore.
Yeah.
This, that, and the other. Versus, you know, now the single people who, because what do they say? You want the 5 people you hang around the most to a lot about you and everything. Now, if you're a single person who aspires to be in a loving relationship that leads to marriage and everything else, and you hang around these people because you're like taking mental notes, that's a completely different thing. But what happens is that the human mind does what it does, and you know, it can subconsciously get jealous. It can subconsciously be, you know, okay, guys, have a good night. They're going home together, and you're going home to your bed by yourself. And it's kind of like, you know, F them, right? It's very hard for people to truly be happy for others when they're not in a happy place themselves. And I'm not saying that all married people are happy, because that's clearly not the case. And I'm not saying all single people are sad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you see certain responses or certain replies, which is a stereotypical thing, like if, for example, a woman or girlfriend say, hey, let's go have happy hour or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, no, I have to cook dinner tonight. Some women are like, okay, you know, that whole thing, like, oh, you're cooking, you know, it's like that thing, right? And she might, again, I don't know, she might actually enjoy cooking for her family, or they might cook together. It might be something they do together as a bonding experience. Like, for example, oftentimes during like our anniversary, we like cooking instead of going to an expensive restaurant, we create the expensive restaurant, you know, ourselves, and we cook up some really good stuff, like some tomahawk steaks and everything else, right? So anyway, what I'm saying is that, you know, oftentimes people can see others' success and just, I don't want to say the word hate because I'm using that word, but just kind of like just not feel too good about that. And
well, this is something that I want everyone watching this. If you're single, whether you're a man or a woman, this is something, because I'm agreeing with you. So this is the way that cycles work in relationships. First, all the friends usually start out, they're all single. Then one friend in the friend group gets a boyfriend and she disappears and they never see that friend again. Or he gets a girlfriend and he disappears and he's never seen again. Then the friends will start to shame them and guilt trip them into trying to get them to come back into the circle and to choose them over their partner. When that doesn't work, then they stop inviting them altogether. So this is a typical thing that happens. And I hope that everyone watching, male or female, understands that every single friend in that friend group, when they meet someone, will go through the same process. Every single one. They're going to meet someone, and then they're going to start to, the friend group will start to see them less and less and less. This is a part of life, and this is something that we're supposed to do. So us shaming each other for it is really odd, because it's a part of life. We're supposed to do that. We're supposed to find someone to begin to build a life with. That's part of our life's journey. It's
almost kind of like if how some people can feel survivor's remorse. Like, let's say one dude in the group made it or whatever, and he makes a high salary, and he moves away and finds his wife, has his house and everything else. They, you know, oh, you forgot about us, or you left the hood, or whatever the hell it is, right? I'm not saying all black people live in the hood. Please don't think that, because I know how it's going to come across. But you know, you're a sellout or what, all types of stuff. It's like shaming people for their success sucks. And one of the challenges it doesn't feel good. It's sorry, honey, but this is, and I agree with everything you're saying. One of the big things is this, right? I was reading, I think it was, I don't remember who the author was, but she was basically talking about how friends hold on. But she was talking about how friends can keep us sick. Meaning, she was saying that, for example, they keep us sick by saying things like, you're not fun anymore. And usually you not being fun anymore is stopping a behavior that was unhealthy in the first place. So an example of that would be if you invite a friend out and that friend decides to stop drinking, they're going to view that friend in a negative way, but stopping drinking is a healthy thing to do. But they're going to make that friend feel like you're not fun anymore. So and it was very interesting to read that. And I view when you get into a relationship the same way, that is a healthy thing to do. But your friends can unintentionally make you feel like you're not fun anymore for bringing something healthy into your life. So, that's a big one, man.
And,
man. And so it's challenging out there. I mean, you know, maybe we can develop an app for blackmarriedcouples.com.
What are you talking about? We're working on one.
I know that was the
I didn't get that.
Mentioning that. Where you know they had a blackpeoplemeet.com. You know,
was that a thing?
Yeah,
it was. I don't remember.
Yeah, there was that.
It was like a dating app.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. And so, but it's
So I'll share a relate. Sorry, honey.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No. Okay. Go. You're good.
So since we're talking about challenges, I'll share a challenge that's something that can be very challenging in marriage for women. And that is, men talk a lot about feeling like women emasculate men. Men talk a lot about feeling like their wives emasculate them. But what happens is often is that women are women, therefore they don't really experience emasculation. They experience defeminization, which is a different thing, but they don't really experience emasculation. So often when she's just doing her, there isn't an intent to hurt him or to emotionally harm him. She just doesn't experience that behavior as emasculating. So there's no way for her to know until she starts to learn what behaviors are emasculating to her partner. And in marriage, that can be very complex because often men can think that it's intentional versus it coming from a space of just not knowing better or not understanding his world better. And that's usually where it comes from, because if you're married to someone who loves you, they're not intentionally trying to hurt you. Oftentimes they just don't know what your world is like. So does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I'll see if I can add on to that.
Yeah.
And add to the fact that whatever programming their mother put into them, where be independent, do for yourself, take care of this, take care of that, and you're in a relationship, either if you're cohabitating, move in together, you get married, and she wants to take care of everything on her own. The guy's like, why am I here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you do know that you have a husband, and, and then she might be kind of like a micromanager per se of the things he does. Like, wait, what did you do there? And she might correct it and change it and this, that, and the other. And a lot of times too, for example, women will, if I say they have children, and let's say a man is, disciplining their kids or whatever, blah, blah, blah. She may interfere. And that's something that couples should never do to each other, right? And, the man should never interfere. When they can talk about it after, but not in front of the kids, right? And so, yeah, they're, and the thing is, she doesn't know she's doing it because all she's doing was what her mom taught her, like taking care of herself and making sure you're on top of the bank account, making sure you're this, and so that's all she's doing. And like, you're right, she may not even know. And of course, we add to the fact that he wasn't, trained to speak his mind emotionally.
It's something that women aren't taught. But I want to be very careful here that I say this too. A man needs to also do his work to know the difference between when he is being emasculated and when she's just sharing her perspective. So these things can get really complex because they can get really complex. So I just want to be careful there in saying that, yes, women can often emasculate their husbands from a space of ignorance without recognizing how certain things that she does or says might come across to him. And as you were saying, and what makes that even harder is that the man is very unlikely to share that with her verbally and express how he feels about things. So that can make marriage really difficult. But I also want to say here that a healthy man knows the difference between an emasculating behavior and her just sharing her opinion or just sharing her perspective. He's able to tell the difference. The same way that a healthy woman is able to tell the difference between when her partner is leading and when he's controlling. So that's the work that both sides have to do.
Yeah. No, I would have to agree.
I will say, and you tell me your comfort level in talking about this as a challenge, not necessarily personally. But I think in marriage, obviously, sex can be.
I was literally just thinking that.
Okay. So,
no, hey. Listen,
okay, so go ahead.
So how do we get into this? Yeah, the expectations of sex. Again, guys, more likely than not, a man's not going to propose to someone, I hope, a man's not going to propose to someone who he thinks is absolutely horrible at sex, or assuming, my assumption, my projections, I'm saying if they are, hey, whatever, right? And that they don't enjoy or find sexy or anything like that, right? And so, like the saying goes, men hope that she doesn't change, right? And what happens is, and this is another part we should have mentioned too, but I think what can happen is that people forget that people grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so people do make New Year's resolutions every single year,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's not, I'm going to drink Diet Coke instead of Diet Pepsi type of thing. It's
mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to start blocking negative content. I'm
mm-hmm.
going to literally things that change their psyche and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so what can happen is if lots of men have this mentality of, I hope she stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this mentality that I hope he grows. And it could be, when I met you, you didn't ask for all this. And now you're asking me, why are you trying to, like whoever watched Martin, stop trying to change me, Gina. Right? Why is she trying to change me? And why is she trying to? And so what happens is that oftentimes the guy, again, me, for example, did the work thing.
One more, I didn't hear what you said.
The guy, for example, right? I did the work thing. I did the provide thing. I did the be home thing. I did the daddy thing. I'm going to play video games now. I'm going to watch my Heat game now, right? And that was the routine. And hearing that, like, do you expect this to get her all in the mood all the time? And I'd be like, I just would not understand what the problem is, right? And oftentimes, because I'm not sure, again, I don't want to project all men to this, but I think men are more creatures of habit and routine than women are, I think. Right?
I can agree with that.
Right. And so it's like, in a way.
Yeah. I can.
It's not exact, right?
You know why I hesitated, right?
Yes,
but I can.
I know.
I can agree with that.
You have to have the numbers. So yeah. And so, I this work thing, I brought the bacon. I'm home at 5. I eat at 6. I watch the game at 7. 10:30, kids are in bed. Let's get freaky. Hopefully she falls asleep. I play some video games on myself. Good. Repeat the same cycle again. Yeah. And so you basically get used to the cycle, like everything is fine. And then, not knowing that it's not really fun, not really exciting. You're just oblivious to things.
Yeah.
And so what can happen is when the tough part, the challenges in being married and when it comes to sex and everything is keeping the same interests and both being both sides being happy where they are in their sex lives, because oftentimes that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about frequency either, because it can be frequent but bad for her.
Yeah.
Right.
Which it usually is. Right? But that let me say something here. So this is a tough topic, not because I'm uncomfortable talking about it. You know that. But what can make it a tough topic is that both men and women struggle to be honest and vulnerable about their sexual needs in relationships. They expect that they just figure it out. Just do it without me having to say it. Because they don't want to be vulnerable to say, this is what I need when it comes to sex. They just don't want to do it. So that already makes their sex life hard. The other thing that makes it hard is that women are conditioned in society to never tell a man when it's not good, because she can feel she doesn't want to hurt him, especially her husband. So even if she's not enjoying it, she's going to have a hard time getting to that space where she can share with him that she's not enjoying it. So it gets really hard. Like you were saying about when men think that if they pay the bills, they're loyal, then that should be all that in a way that it takes for her to be in the mood every day.
I don't think they think that. They just think I'm doing the thing, happens. So I'm good. Yeah.
If I'm doing my part, you're doing your part.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll say something here. Some of the worst sex advice I've ever heard someone give to couples was this woman who said that even if the wife is not in the mood, she should still do it anyways. And her rationale behind that was that often women are not in the mood, but once they start doing it, then they start to like it. That was her rationale. Yeah. So she was telling the wives, even if you're not in the mood, just do it, because as you start, you're going to get in the mood. This was horrible advice. Yeah. And the reason why it's horrible advice is that the man's desire is to keep consistent sex in his relationship.
Yeah.
So if she consistently gives that to him, she's going to get to a place of resentment, because at what point is he going to give her what she needs in their sexual relationship? Mm-hmm. He's not even going to think it's necessary, right? Because they're having sex all the time, because she's like, I'm not in the mood, just do it. I'm not in the mood, just do it. I'm not in the mood, just do it. And that is horrible advice. Yeah. What works better for couples is for both partners to learn how to have a healthy and satisfying sexual relationship with each other. Mm-hmm. It is not just do it, because once you start, you'll like it. That was horrible advice. Yeah. That will lead to resentment. Mm-hmm. That will lead to your wife resenting you, because you have to be a man who recognizes that for that to work. I'll put it to you this way: for that advice to work out well, that man has to recognize that even though she's just doing it, she still has needs herself. Mm. So he still needs to be able to be like, you know what? I know you're just doing, I appreciate you doing this for me, babe. But what can I do for you? Mm-hmm. Right? What do you need from me? He has to be able to do that. Do you understand what I'm saying? 100%. If that man is not able to do that, because he's like, well, we're doing it, so and it stops there, it's going to breed a lot of resentment in the relationship. So I just don't think it's good advice.
No, I agree. I will also. So, for example, let's go here, right? Mm-hmm. And I would love men in the comments to reply with this, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just get right into it. Mm-hmm. How many men who are in relationships with their girlfriend or wife feel comfortable asking for head? Mm-hmm. How do you ask for that without being this or pig-headed or whatever it is, right? And so it's already I don't know if I want to say frowned upon for men to state certain needs in relationship, but how, so you're saying how couples need to be open and honest in a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. If a man wants that, what's the best way for him to ask that? And also, do you think women are capable of receiving that request or that ask from him in a healthy way without being like, ew, or don't, whole thing?
We can't say this is, it's hard, because I'm going to talk about wives only because I want to say something here. Mm-hmm. People often say that once the woman gets a marriage contract, sex goes out the window. That's something that you hear often, without people recognizing that married men actually have more sex than single men. They just don't know that. But anyways, so I would first ask that man, how was it when they were dating? When they were just boyfriend and girlfriend? Is this a request that he ever had of her? Did they ever have conversations about that? Because if they've never had any conversations about it, of course it's going to be hard to bring it into your marriage. You never talked about it. There was never any conversation about it. So,
but I'm asking in both, because we work with married couples and couples who are trying to get married. Yeah. Right. I'm asking for both boyfriend and girlfriend in that stage. How would that interaction happen? Yeah.
He would just have to be out with it and recognize that that doesn't mean he's going to get it, and recognize that doesn't mean that it's not going to bother her. So to answer your question, one of the conversations that's important for boyfriends and girlfriends to have before they get married, that people tend to try to avoid having, is about sexual boundaries. So it's basically having a direct, honest, raw, bad choice of words, vulnerable conversation about what your sexual boundaries are, meaning what you will and will not do. That's a conversation that couples in general just don't tend to have with each other, but it's extremely important, especially before you get married. Because once you get married, you can't have an expectation that your partner is willing to do something that you guys never spoke about. It's just an unrealistic expectation. So I would say that if a man has things that he wants, and a woman too, that these conversations about sexual boundaries should happen while they are still boyfriend and girlfriend, preferably. Now, if you're already married and you haven't had that conversation yet, then the sooner the better, to have that conversation about sexual boundaries, what I will not do, what I do and do not like, and all of that. Because what happens is a lot of times people don't talk to their partners, they don't talk to their boyfriend, they don't talk to their girlfriend, they go straight to social media and try and figure out, what do girls like? What do boys like? What do women like? What do men like? And then they expect their partner to desire the exact same things, but it doesn't work this way.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know if we should go into this.
Okay.
What about in-laws?
Yeah, we should. I think it's important. Right? That's a big one.
Yeah. Setting healthy boundaries with in-laws.
Yeah. That's a big marital challenge. Yeah. That's a really, really, really big challenge. Especially mothers, it can be really hard to set healthy boundaries with them. When it comes to when they're in-laws. But it's important that the husband and the wife, that they do that. 100%.
Yeah, because there could be a lot of pressure that the family, adds onto the relationship. Or when you guys gonna have kids, and when they come over, they kind of look at the place and like
they're judging.
Like they're judging, and they're looking at certain things, and how come you don't come by anymore, and things like that. Or they'll make comments about, or the mother will talk to the husband about how the children are being raised, and or the mother, things like that, right? That's what I'm saying, especially the mothers.
Man, let me tell a personal story here.
Please do.
I remember when we were still boyfriend and girlfriend, after school, we used to spend a lot of time in your bedroom, just like watching TV, me falling asleep while you're playing video games or something like that, right?
I put her to sleep. I put her to sleep. Very different.
Okay. So there was once.
Did she deny it?
There was once I was in your room.
Yes.
And there was just stuff everywhere. So I was like, okay, if I'm gonna be in here, I hung clothes, put them away, fixed the bed, whatever. And what was funny about that?
That's why she's married.
No, that's not why.
That's one of the reasons.
No, it wasn't for you. I just was trying to be comfortable. I was just trying to listen. Anyways, so
God was working.
Yep, I guess. So, but I put, put stuff away, right? And I think at the time, you went to pick up food or something. I don't remember because you weren't there. I think you left to go get food. This was before we could just, Uber everything.
I was providing.
Oh my gosh. Before we could Uber everything. So you went to pick up food for us. And when I was putting everything away. Soon as your mom got home, because she got home. Soon as your mom got home, she went and refixed everything that I had already fixed. So she was literally, it was almost like she was sending a message. And at the time I didn't think that. I just thought it was weird behavior. I was just like, this is a little bit weird, but that was just my first experience of what it might be like with in-laws when people do get married, some of the challenges of dealing with in-laws.
Because she knew.
She knew what?
She knew, like, oh man, this one is a keeper.
Okay. Anyways, like I said, I did not do it for you. I was trying to be comfortable.
Listen,
nevertheless, that was my first experience, with dealing with, in-law issues, even though we weren't married or anything like that. But it was just an interesting experience because I was just like, why did you just refix everything I just fixed?
And you know what the crazy thing is? I'm pretty sure a bunch of women are going to be like, I've experienced this too, right? Because now the question is why?
What do you mean?
Why do mothers do things like this? Is because, what did Dr. Phil say? Red flags, single mother of a boy, of
an only child, and he's male.
And he's a male. Oof. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so it could be many different reasons why she did that. But it's so what should have happened there is you could have told me about it. And then without you being there, I could have spoken to her about it.
I did tell you about it.
Well, I am not the man that I used to be.
I agree. I agree. It would be weird if you still were. So I agree, but I'm just saying that but mothers can really make it hard on their sons when their sons get into relationships. They really can. They can make it really hard on them.
Yeah. No, I would have to agree.
Long story short, in-laws can make it hard. Especially mothers can make it really hard on their sons.
Oof.
They can really give their daughters-in-law like a really hard time.
Yeah.
I remember this one story where a mother wore a white dress to her son's wedding.
Wow.
Just to spite, his wife to be.
Oh.
So they can really do a lot of really toxic and unhealthy things to mess with the relationship. Now, it's not the man's responsibility to fix his mother, but it is his responsibility to clearly set those boundaries. And not only that, but also there needs to be consequences to when the mother crosses a boundary. There needs to be a consequence to that. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the consequence is what men can struggle with, because that's my mama, right?
Yeah.
That's what they can really struggle with.
And she doesn't mind cooking for me.
Okay.
I'm joking. I'm just trying to piss the women off in the comments. That's all. I'm honestly joking. But yeah, it was quite a lot.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you are in your 20s, with all due respect, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, women, right? If you are in your 20s,
the man or her?
Both.
Okay,
Right?
A couple that's in their 20s.
Women. Yeah, if women who are dating men in their 20s.
Yeah.
If you think, now I'm not going to project everything onto all these men. If you think dudes in their 20s are going to be super, mature and upfront and setting boundaries, especially with their parents, again, I'm just going to be realistic with you. Nah. I'm not saying it can't happen. Nah. Now, will it eventually get there? Yes. Now, it's up to her to determine. I guess this is why a lot of younger women like to date older men. Because
the older ones aren't better at setting boundaries with their mamas. Well, that's not true at all. It's not true.
Look, listen.
No,
I would hope. Okay,
that's not true.
I'm not saying a lot, but I would hope that they're somewhat better, because
no, I think that I don't think it's an age thing, and I think we make a huge mistake when we think that a man in his 20s automatically is going to be less wise than an older man. It's not true. There are plenty of older men that are less wise than men in their 20s. Trust. Wow. There are a lot of them. Yeah. So it is a mistake to think that if a woman thinks that, if I date older, that he's going to be wiser and
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because it's kind of like what does that quote say? We all grow older, but not wiser.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. So this idea that an older person will know better, that an older person will do better. No, people tend to get stuck more in their ways as they get older.
Yeah.
They're less open to learning a new skill. Yeah. So if you meet a man who's in his 40s and you're going to try and get him to learn how to set boundaries with his mama that he's never set, forget about it. It's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, the 20-something-year-old man is much more likely to be willing and open to learning how to set boundaries with his mama than the 40-something-year-old man,
like an
by far.
Tricks
It's like that other quote that says, you absolutely can teach an old dog. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can teach a willing dog new tricks. And what happens is with a lot of these men, as they get older, they become less willing in general. So I'm going to disagree that if he's older, it means that he's going to set boundaries with his mama. That's not really true.
I got you. No,
yeah,
fair. More than fair. Okay. We are. Let me see here. Yeah.
Do you want me to summarize? The challenges.
We can summarize. We have a few minutes left.
Yeah. So some of the challenges we talked about, some of the challenges in marriage we talked about is the power dynamics that can happen very often. Another one is differences in personality. The other thing that we talked about was sexual boundaries and asking for things that we desire in sex. We also talked about issues with in-laws. We also talked about vulnerability and how men feel like they aren't heard and listened to and validated in their relationships.
The lack of support from friends.
Lack of support from friends and social circles.
The lack of married couples. That plays into the lack of support from friends.
Yeah.
But the lack of fellow married couples that you can lean into and have a whole community. Yeah.
So that's quite a few there. And if I'm honest, those are not the only ones. So that sounds like a lot, but there's also a lot more more challenges that we didn't talk about. And people can hear certain things and be like, then why get married at all? But let me say something here. I don't want to get too much into it in this because we're ending here. But when people say why get married at all, the answer to that is you actually are, statistically speaking, more likely to feel more satisfied with your relationship if you are married than if you're just living together. The stats in terms of cohabitation and just living with a partner that you're not married to don't look very good. So they look even worse than the stats and the research that you'll learn about when it comes to a marriage.
And there's a pride in it too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of a lot of benefits as well, which we'll cover in another episode.
Yeah, the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay, Mrs. Pichon.
Yeah.
Wifey, I enjoyed the conversation. And as always, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Couples Development Podcast. You could find us pretty much on all social media at Couples Development. And our website is couplesdevelopment.com. If you'd like to see a full episode, you can head over to YouTube and look us up, Couples Development. We'll be there for the full episode. This is on YouTube.
I was being a good wifey there, and I didn't correct you. What was my prize?
I'll show you later.
Oh dear.
So that was too easy. Thank you guys for joining us. We would love I would like to say this. We thank you a lot for your support. We're a new channel, and we're sincere in our mission into trying to bring in different perspectives to bring people together and keeping them together
happily and healthily.
Healthily
and happily.
Yeah.
Not just keeping them together.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so we thank you for your support. We thank you for subscribing. We thank you for your comments. We don't take it for granted, and we'd love to grow with you guys. So any comments you guys have, please let us know. Leave a like, leave a comment, share this with anyone who you think could use this information. We only mean well, but if you have something you don't like, let us know as well too. But other than that, thank you again for joining us. Have a good rest of your week.